You are listening to the Enormocast.
When it comes to Sportiva, I often praise the longevity of their venerated classics like the Mira. Because, well, if it ain't Baroque, don't fix it. Italian Baroque, that is. But as we know, I'm a stick in the mud whose glory days are well behind him. But you, dear listener, still have your best days waiting to jump out at you like a puppy wearing a backpack full of caramel corn. So hey, forward thinkers, let's take a gander at what's new over at Sportiva.com. The redesigned Cantana lace is an absolute edging machine. The updated Tarantula line provides comfort and performance at a price point for everybody. The TX2 Evo adds even more performance to Sportiva's stow-and-go approach shoes. And the new Mantra is a minimalist slipper so light and flowy, you'll swear you accidentally showed up to the gym in only your underwear. Just like in that dream you had last night. Don't worry, I just looked down too. So when it comes to keeping you thinking ahead, Sportiva is there with innovation at every turn. Why not see what's up and head over to Sportiva.com or follow them on Instagram. And remember, Sportiva is a proud sponsor of the Enormocast.
Listen, where are you playing in town? Are you playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
a
big place outside of town. That's a big place. You sold it out.
20,000 seats.
You
really should.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing with you. We'll make it. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, La Sportiva, and with support from Maxim Ropes. Maxim has been keeping the Enormocast off the deck since 2012.
And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enormo at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is about 10 o'clock on July 29th, 2022, and this is episode 246 of the Enormocast, a conversation with Bronwyn Hodgins, or Bron as she's known to her friends. And this is Bron's second appearance on the show. She was on the show circa 2019 with her husband, Jacob Cook. And after watching her evolve as a climber since that interview, and accomplishing some really incredible stuff, I decided that it was certainly time to catch up with Bron. And when she met Jacob, she was a novice climber. He was experienced. And though they fell in love and got married, it was also sort of a mentorship relationship. In the last few years and recently, she's definitely come out from under that a little bit and become this incredible climber in her own right, a guide, going out and doing some adventures on her own, even though they still do incredible stuff together as well. So yeah, it was time to have Bron on again and just talk about some of the shit she's been doing, which is really mind-blowing where she's come as a climber. And something that's important to note about Bron is that her personality sort of belies the skills that she brings to the table. You know, she's pretty bubbly, she's fun to talk to, she's very self-deprecating, and yet she's tough as nails. She's one of the more determined climbers I've ever met. And her and Jacob and this crew of friends that she has goes as big as you can get on these giant whitewater / climbing expeditions into the Arctic. Her background is in Arctic whitewater expeditions that she would do with her family. So she's got these skills that work out really well for doing logistics on giant expeditions. Her and Jacob and their crew are currently deep in Greenland. I just looked for some updates. There aren't any. They aren't spitting out any media while they're out there. We have to wait till they get home. They're kayaking up these fjords, looking for walls to climb, both fast and light and big wall expedition type stuff for a couple months. I don't know when we'll hear from them, but maybe they'll throw something up to the satellite. You can follow along at Bronwyn Hodgins over there at Instagram, or look up Jacob Cook. He had the last kind of post before they hit the water. Awesome stuff. Can't wait to hear what happens. All right, so let's catch up with Bronwyn Hodgins just before she slipped into the Arctic. Does how you get your stuff to the crag really matter that much? Couldn't you just throw it in a hefty bag and sling it over your shoulder, or drag it up the trail to most cliffs just fine? Probably. But as long as we're on about things that don't matter, remember that the sun will eventually atomize the planet and suck it all into a black hole, including that beautiful rack you just finished accumulating. So does anything really matter? Well, disregarding that existential crisis, maybe it's time for a new pack from Black Diamond that looks better, carries better, and just says, I have my shit together. You can trust me. For starters, Black Diamond's Creek 50 has become a legendary all-day crag pack with haul bag durability and a smooth finish. The new Transit series takes the same sleek, no flim-flam design to the streets with tight little packs for your on-foot commute, rolling to the gym, travel, or just running down to the coffee shop to get internet and update your Insta-Face My Tweet tick tube. Black Diamond also has mini packs for long routes, duffels for the gym, big packs for you kitchen sink types, lightweight running, and alpine packs. All the packs. And guess what? They even have climbing packs without ice axe loops. Most of us don't need the ice axe loops, you guys. So to get the right packs to do what you want and only what you want from the climbers at Black Diamond, go to blackdiamondequipment.com or your favorite local shop. Anyway, so yeah, I'm psyched that you did this. I know I had to badger you a little bit, but I hope you didn't mind. I was just like watching your Instagram, like, you got to take a rest day or something. Like, let's go.
Oh man, I take lots of rest days, but right now I just feel like I have so many like little or big projects on the go that any rest day is taken up by like computer logistics, and I don't know, a total rest day of just like relaxing is maybe something I haven't done in a while.
Yeah, so I went ahead and reviewed our previous conversation, and it was from 2019, which it felt like longer ago, but I guess that's getting a while. But also,
I would have guessed more like 5 years, but
yeah, the other thing is
right after I climbed Freerider, I remember, and I think it was before we went to Baffin Island. Before.
you guys had dropped your cash and were like ready to leave because we talked about how your stuff was out there waiting for you.
Right,
so yeah, you were on the verge of leaving for Asgard on that trip. Yeah, and you told that great story, Freerider, and so it was a fun conversation. I was really happy to revisit it actually, and I think one of the things that confuses us is that you and I and Jacob met a few years before that even. In my mind, it felt like longer ago because I was equating it with that, but the interview didn't happen until quite a bit later. So that's kind of where it all went down. So anyway, it's great to see you and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's kind of funny timing the parallel between this chat and our last chat, because once again, I have a large amount of equipment on its way to a faraway destination where I'm headed in a few weeks.
Oh, is that right?
So you catch me like right before I have like a huge story to tell. But
okay, well, look, I just went and reviewed a little bit about all the different things you've done since we talked, and that's kind of why I wanted to have you on for a few reasons. Are you willing to sort of crack the secret on where you're going, or is it like a heavy project you don't want to talk about yet?
No secrets. We are, Jacob and I and a few others are headed to the west coast of Greenland. In about a month.
Is Thor going?
Thor is not coming this time, actually, sadly. But our friend Jaren is coming, and our new hashtag is Jaren. Hashtag Jaren is the new Thor.
Okay,
it's kind of an inside joke. He has a similar personality. So
how's Thor?
He's good. He actually moved to BC. He lives on the island now. He's a little bit closer.
Cool.
Working as a school teacher.
Yeah. So
and he also is running his own tree planting business. So I think that's why he couldn't get away for the summer.
Oh, he's adulting. Anyway, but yeah, cool. Well, he was a major player in some of your other stories from that last podcast. But yeah, tell me a little bit about. We'll do the Wayback Machine because it has been a few years since you did the Asgard trip. Although it took a while for the film to come out, but it's been out for a little while too. But that seemed like it was a pretty successful mission. At least I watched the film just the other day, and backed it up with what we had talked about on the podcast. But it sounds like your plan pretty much nailed it. Is that my correct perception? Yeah.
I think we got incredibly lucky with the weather on on Baffin Island. We basically arrived, paddled up the fjord on this like crystal clear, calm ocean water, which, you know, was kind of unexpected. Made it up the fjord, hiked into the valley, hiked up to Mount Asgard, and basically right away, Jacob and I climbed Mount Asgard via a new route. Less than a week into the 5-week expedition. And that was kind of like our main goal or hopeful goal for the whole trip. And we basically accomplished it like in the first quarter. And then everything after that was bonus. I think as a team, we climbed 7 major formations. 4 of them were first ascents. Yeah, basically just had spectacular weather, a few storms, but we kind of needed them to force ourselves to rest anyways. So,
that's awesome.
That was
I mean,
incredible.
And to review, you know, the trip was a self-propelled pack raft trip. You started on the ocean into a fjord and then walked up to Asgard and then dropped into another river and stopped along the way down back to where you started. Is that about sum it up?
Yeah, totally. So self-propelled from where, you know, the airplane drops you in the Inuit community of Pangnirtung.
Right.
So
right.
Obviously there's like transportation involved, but from Pangnirtung we pack rafted up the ocean fjord into the mountainous valley, climbed Mount Asgard and a few other peaks, and then headed down the Weasel River by pack raft, which had some fun whitewater, and climbed Mount Thor, which was about halfway down the river as well, and a couple other formations along the way, and then ended back in Pangnirtung.
Yeah, what a sick trip.
40 days.
Yeah, I was really stoked on the weather actually when I was watching the film, because there were some shots where it's just like bluebird skies and stuff, and you just don't see a ton of that.
We're above the Arctic Circle there too, so it was like 24-hour daylight.
Yeah, 24-hour bluebird, right?
Yeah, which when you're in the mountains is incredible, because you don't really need to work on this like 24-hour schedule. You can kind of just like start a huge mountain mission at noon after a really good night's sleep and climb until you get to the top, and then descend until you get to the bottom and come back to camp at whatever hour you're at and sleep then for a full, you know, night and a half of sleep and then do it again.
Yeah, we talked about the Cirque on the last show too, and having been up there, I remember kind of like you just sort of lose track of time too. And, you know, we were doing a wall, so we could stop anytime. You know, we're up there for days, and I don't know, I kept just getting so wrecked, and I would be like, you know, my clock was so screwed up that I would have thought we had been climbing for 8 hours and we'd been climbing for 17 hours kind of a thing. It was like like, why am I so wrecked? You know, why am I so tired? And it's like, well, yeah, because the sun hasn't moved doesn't mean that hours haven't passed, you know? But that was my only time.
It takes away that kind of those constraints a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, you had a shot in the film where the sun was about as low as it was going to get, and it was just like right on the horizon. And then, I remember how it just like the parabola goes the other way and it just comes right back up over the next few hours. So it is pretty wild. So what's your mission? I mean, more specifically in Greenland?
Yeah. So our plan is we are starting in Uummannaq, which is a small coastal community, and we are sea kayaking in inflatable sea kayaks from Uummannaq to Upernavik, which is about 400 kilometers, mostly of kind of inland fjords. There's not really any open ocean paddling, which is good, makes it safer. These fjords will definitely be, you know, there'll be icebergs and Arctic waters. And it's also polar bear country, whereas Baffin Island, that area wasn't really. So this time we'll be doing all the polar bear precautions, which is a little scary. And so sea kayaking between Uummannaq and Upernavik, and there's just these huge cliffs rising out of the ocean, basically along the entire route. There have been expeditions to the area before, kind of expeditions to each zone, often by sailboat. I don't know of anyone who's connected these two zones, so we'll be taking this kind of back route up this fjord that I don't think definitely no climbers have traveled there before. And seeing what we see and climbing the cliffs. We have a few ideas of what cliffs in mind. A combination of talking to people who have been there before and looking closely at the high resolution of Google Earth. Yeah,
I can only imagine that Nico and his crew have been there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. Yep, by sailboat.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, hoping to put up some. There's huge. I mean, like LCAP size, like 800-meter granite walls rising right out of the ocean all the way along that coastline. So pretty excited about that.
And so you've got a cache going in as well this time?
Yeah, we do. So the plan is it's kind of like 2 expeditions in one. We have this through route, which should take us about a month. And on that, we will just have like fast and light kind of alpine style climbing equipment. And then once we get to near the end of that trip, we have a cache with all of our big wall equipment and a kind of reload of food, a restock of food. And at that point, we have our eyes on a big wall that we are probably going to try and get the first free ascent of this big cliff and climb it capsule style, kind of with portal edges and all the big wall equipment and camp on the wall for a week or 2.
And that's towards the end?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that'll be kind of the second month.
Right.
Doing
so
that, or
2
3
months
weeks or so. Mm-hmm.
That's
so this
amazing.
Big journey with these alpine missions and then a big wall mission at the end.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, you guys are, I don't know if I would go as far as to say inventing this style, but definitely sort of pushing the limits of what's possible and the imagination as well of this, floating in by hand, if you will, and having all your gear with you or having these caches. It takes an incredible amount of planning. And that was one of the things that I was super impressed with, and like you said, you got lucky and luck is always part of it as far as, of course, the weather. But the way the pieces fit together on that Asgard thing was pretty impressive, but you have this background in this whitewater expedition world that may not be obvious, to people who know you from climbing. We talked a bit about it last time, but fill us in on, your sort of background and your family background with these type of big, at least whitewater trips.
Yeah. So I grew up in a family that was very outdoorsy. My parents were river guides, northern river guides in Canada. That's how they met. And so we just grew up doing like all sorts of camping, hiking, canoeing, skiing, backpacking. And then I also was a river guide for 7 seasons before I became a rock guide. And I would guide these 1 month to 2 month sort of long exploratory river expeditions, essentially, kind of all over Canada. And so for me, it's really fun now that I'm like completely obsessed with rock climbing to kind of take that background of kind of the menu planning, the logistics planning of just like how to support yourself in a really remote location for a month or 2 and apply that to these big climbing expeditions.
Yeah, and it's an impressive skill set, really, and it's like these expeditions are probably, all the better for having you along in terms of that, because I think climbers have to learn all that stuff from experience, like once they become climbers, and to have you have both skills is a pretty heavy skill set that's probably appreciated a great deal in your crew.
Yeah, I think it's helpful.
So when you mentioned the polar bear thing, what is, when you say polar bear precautions, what exactly does that look like? Where have you learned that?
Yeah, we'll be having a tripwire fence around our camp every night. That sets off an alarm. So I think the kind of most dangerous time for an encounter is when you're sleeping, because you're caught unaware. So that will set off an alarm to wake us up. And we will also be bringing a gun with us. And Jaren on the team has like a background in hunting, so he'll kind of be the head like gunman if it comes to that.
Right.
But we'll start with like making lots of noise, and we have some bear spray and doing the sort of try and scare it away first method if we do come across one.
Mm-hmm. Are there sections of the trip that it's sort of more of a problem than others? Are you aware of like? So
it seems like the polar bears are basically a problem in the fjords when there's ice, because then they come down onto the ice to hunt for seals. And so it's more of a problem in the winter and spring, fall. Summer less so because the ice recedes, so then the polar bears go up onto the mainland. But anytime we're paddling and there's ice coming like down to the water, that's kind of like an access point for them. It also seems that there are more commonly sightings in the northern part of our trip than the southern. And I don't exactly know why, just talking to the locals, it seems to be more of a problem around Upernavik than Umanak.
It's no joke, right? Like, we're dealing with black bears and shit around here, and like, you know, the polar bear is on top of that pyramid of aggressiveness, I think, even past grizzlies. So, yeah, it's no joke. That's why I wanted to ask you about it. Well, and Jacob had a real problem with the bugs. How's he feeling about the polar bears?
Oh, yeah, different game.
I just kind of want to go down like the greatest hits and have you tell some stories, if you don't mind.
For sure.
One of the interesting things, again, listening back to that other podcast, is at that point Jacob had gone down to El Gavilan in Mexico, and you actually guys, and he had climbed the original route on there, the Jeff Jackson route, and had been talking about how terrible the gear was, and that was the end of it then. And then you guys have gone on to be like big developers down there, and in fact you took on the task of rebolting that route, and you know, maybe go sort of blow by blow with how you guys got so enchanted with it.
Yeah, totally. So this is a cool discussion to have on here. This cliff, La Popa, in the Mexican desert, is somewhere Jacob and I have spent a lot of time over the recent years, and we first heard about this cliff from your podcast. So the episode with Jeff Jackson, which I think was like right at the start of your of the
I think it's 19 actually.
You had Jeff on the show, and he was telling these wild stories about his experience on La Popa and putting up the first route on the cliff, El Gavilan. Which he did. It took him 3 seasons to put up. He first went ground up with various partners to establish the route, and then came back and managed to free climb it, kind of in a 3-year timeline, like in the late 90s. And yeah, the way he describes the cliff, like this insanely overhanging limestone wall in the desert, tufa knee bar, like steep sport climbing, but for 10 pitches. Yeah, definitely like captivated at the time Jacob's attention. I mean, when we were listening to that podcast, I wasn't like, I was just kind of still getting into climbing, I think. Like, I was still a pretty beginner in the world of rock climbing. But yeah, this idea of this remote cliff in the desert that also had these kind of weird stories around it. Like Jeff's kind of like a storyteller. I think he's actually like a professor of storytelling. But yeah, he sort of told these stories of these legends that the locals had told him, sightings of mummies, the mummies of Monterey that walked the desert at night, and like also like shape-shifting horse people, or like
the
people who shift from human to animal by day, by night. And all these kind of like crazy stories and sort of almost like spooky ghost tales of that area.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't just hear these stories. He has
his own experiences
he has claimed to have witnessed many of these things.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, it's funny how many supernatural experiences he's had in Hawaii now, or he lives in Maui now, and turns out that he's seen all sorts of shit like that there too. So I don't know if that's a coincidence, or if he's just one of those magnets for paranormal activity. But nevertheless,
the story sounded awesome. The clip sounded awesome, and it was probably another at least 5 years or so before Jacob made it out to the cliff. And he and Tony climbed up El Gavilan. Yeah, got super freaked out, said the bolts were really old and rusty. They did manage to get to the top. They didn't free climb it. They were pretty scared to fall, and the bolts were kind of aiding. Jacob says he would like climb past the anchor to get to the next bolt to like equalize that bolt into the anchor system, so they had like more things that they were attached to. But they said the route was incredible, like steep, wildly exposed, really fun rock climbing. And they ended up establishing another route on the cliff. So yeah, here talking to Jacob about that, I became interested in the route. I love all styles of climbing, but possibly my favorite might be like steep tufa limestone sport climbing with like 2 knee pads and just like using your whole body in these kind of 3D roofs. And I love big wall climbing and sort of big wall free climbing projects. So this wall just sort of seemed like the combination of both of those things. And so, yeah, I got a few people together who were interested in joining me. We went down to the cliff and sort of started fixing it up. Decided I was going to replace all the bolts on El Gavilan to make it a safe climb, kind of bring it back to life. And that season, I guess it like proved a lot more challenging logistically than I was expecting. Just like getting out there is pretty tough, and finding partners who wanted to go out there also like was kind of tough, which is funny because I have since talked to Jeff about this and he says the same thing. It's like, no one wanted to go out there with me. And just like, I also didn't have all the skills. Like I didn't know how to pull an old bolt out of a rock. Like I hadn't retrofitted a like bolted climb before. I'd done a little bit of like bolting first ascent stuff, but not much. And yeah, so we ended up kind of finishing about half the route that year, kind of unfinished. And then COVID happened, so I didn't make it back down till this past winter. And this time I came with like a crew of people, a very solid plan. My friend Kelsey, who's a like childhood friend of mine, and also quite a strong rock climber, who was going to send the route with me and kind of work the beta together, and then try and get the sort of first female ascent of this cliff at the end of the project. And yeah, it just like went a lot smoother. We were there for 3 weeks and basically just everything went to plan. Finished the route, finished the bolting, established a new rappel route to access it, and then Kelsey and I both sent the route. So it's ready. It's all cleaned up and ready for anyone who wants to go down there.
And you guys also figured out a way to get to the top. I think is an important part of the story, because of course the original part of the whole thing is how far you have to go through like just cactus wasteland to get to it. So it seems like you've improved that a lot as well.
Mm-hmm. The way Jeff like tells the story of the approach, it's like, you drive to the end of the road and you find the hermit that lives at the end of the road, and the hermit gives you a donkey and takes you on this like 4-hour trek through the cactus like up to the cliff. And so we actually like avoided all of that by just driving around the backside of the cliff, where there's actually a small town with a handful of people living there. There's a water hole there, so I guess they can kind of survive. I mean, it's still like middle of the desert. And on the backside, there's actually now a like radio tower of sorts like on the summit of the cliff. So there's actually like a rough road essentially. You couldn't really drive up it without a like serious off-road vehicle, but there is like a kind of steep road up the backside that we can park and then hike up for much easier access. Yeah, no cactus bushwhacking, and it's about a maybe hour and a half walk.
Is there a hermit involved with that?
There's no
approach?
hermit, no. But we did still hire donkeys. So there is a guy in the town in the town that has a donkey. And we did. Water is like quite a challenge to get enough water up there. And so we had a donkey like bring us a few loads of water while we were up there.
So has that route gained any popularity? Do you know anyone who's gone down and clipped your new bolts yet?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So we finished that up around Christmas time this year. And then Jacob and our friend Drew went down there kind of right around that time. Jacob actually filmed Kelsey and I when we sent the route, and we're in the process of making a film about this as well, but I'm giving it all away. And then Jacob and Drew stayed for the month of January, and they established another route right beside El Gavilan, equally as steep, equally as sustained, and slightly harder, all fully bolted. El Gavilan is pretty much sustained at 12 plus with a 13A, and their route is pretty sustained at 12 plus 13 minus with a 13B. And during that time, I think Drew climbed El Gavilan with another partner, and Drew and Jacob sent their line. And then our friend Hayden Jameson, a friend from Salt Lake, got really excited about the two routes on the cliff and went down for a trip and sent both of them in March.
Nice.
Camped out there for 10 days and wrapped into El Gavilan, sent that route, had a few rest days on top, worked the pitches on the new route, Los Nahuales. Yeah, the shape-shifting horse people.
Sure.
Nahuales is the name of Jacob's route. And then Hayden and his partner, Dalen, then sent that one as well in the same trip. And came back saying they were like up there with their favorite multi-bit routes of their lives. So pretty good reviews so far.
Yeah, actually, I know some folks. Andrew over at the Runout, he actually did an early ascent of El Gavilan, but it wasn't so early that the stuff wasn't already rusted. I think Jeff just used really garbage hardware because this was quite a while back, and he still said it was really gross. So they like didn't even have, there aren't even bolts like on the anchors. They just have like really tiny like rusted chain links that they've like hit into the rock. So I, during the process of making this film about the route with my friend Savannah Cummins, she was out there kind of documenting it with her camera, both seasons actually, and we're kind of making a film, so we got the chance to interview like all of the characters who have been out to that cliff. Had a very entertaining interview with Jeff Jackson, retelling all the stories again that you heard on the podcast, and then got the chance to talk to it was Andrew Bishrat, Speed, and Dan Mirsky that went out there and tried to get the second ascent. And basically, it sounds like they just got spooked by the hardware, maybe kind of the remoteness. I think they pulled off some rocks. They ended up bailing. Did he tell you the funny story about his encounter with the hermit?
Those guys, Andrew?
Where he brought him the wrong fruit.
Yes. Yeah, so miraculously, I think they were there a decade or so after Jeff.
Right.
And Jeff tells them, like, oh, there's only one way to get to the cliff. You have to find Luciano, the hermit that lives in an arroyo in the side of the wash. And they're like, yeah, Jeff, whatever. Like, the hermit's probably, like, moved on. And so they arrive here to, like, a decade later, and sure enough, Luciano is still living in the hole in the side of the mud. And the same guy, a decade later remembers Jeff and hikes the next round of climbers like up to this remote cliff. Yeah, and Andrew tells the story that was it bananas that I think. Yeah, well,
he wanted.
Yeah, Jeff
he
remembered
wanted oranges, wanted oranges, but Andrew brought him bananas, I think.
That Jeff had this clear memory, like distinct memory, that the hermit Luciano really liked oranges, and he told Andrew this, and so Andrew with his,
it was lost in translation,
lost in Spanish translation. He was like thinking that he meant naranjas, and which is actually that is oranges, and he thought that meant bananas.
Heard bananas.
And so then he
bananas.
he showed up and gifted the hermit these bananas and told him that he had naranjas for him. And the hermit got all excited, and then he pulls out his bananas, and he said the face of Luciano when he recognized that it was actually bananas, like his face kind of dropped in sadness. So sadly, we didn't get a chance to meet Luciano. But,
who knows if he's quote unquote moved on yet or not.
It sounded like he was pretty old at that time, so not sure.
So one last question though is, like, are these people in this town or this little village or whatever, are they kind of like, why are all these people suddenly showing up and hiking up to the top of this thing? I mean, did you get any sense of that, or did they understand like the whole climbing potential thing?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely didn't really understand what we were doing up there. But it's still not very many people. Right. So we've been out there a handful of times over the past couple years. But yeah, it's not having like crowds of climbers aren't like showing up at the base. That's for sure. It's kind of Jacob and I and a handful of friends here and there.
Yeah, but you guys are going to blow it up.
Wait till next season.
It's like all these places 20 years ago, I was like, this place will never get crowded. It's like, I don't know. Because, it's like there's a lot of climbers and a lot of adventurous climbers that, but you're right. There isn't like a margarita stand at the mouth of the canyon like in Potrero. So,
yeah, for sure.
It's like, it's missing some essentials.
And I do think that the climb is like very high quality, like, and pretty unique in anything I've seen before. And I think that it's kind of a cool like challenge to kind of add on to Potrero. It's only a few hours from Potrero,
Right.
Like you access it from there. And I think more and more climbers are arriving in Potrero and climbing, Sendero Luminoso, like 15 pitch 12 pluses. And I think that, going down to Potrero and trying to do El Gavilan and Sendero Luminoso, like you're essentially doing these like two limestone big routes and of like anti-styles. If you can do Sendero Luminoso, this like 15 pitch vertical to slab 12 plus, and this 9 pitch super overhanging Tufad 13A. I don't know, you've kind of like covered all your bases for like limestone big route climbing. Could be kind of a cool package.
That sounds like a good package. And I mean, it's intriguing. I mean, even to me, because, like a European trip for someone like myself who's a dad and has a 6-year-old, and, you've got to factor in like going over there and having the time zone difference. So you're going to have jet lag and all that sort of thing. And, it sounds like now that you've got these things worked out, it could be a pretty good quick hit that's not as expensive and right here in North America and same time zones. And,
for sure.
So I want to go down. So
his whole trip was 10 days, I think. Hayden, I mean, he's also a very strong rock climber and like was able to send both routes in 10 days. Like, not everyone can go and do that. But if you're only going to try one of them, I mean, camp out there for a few days.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not bothered about necessarily sending. You just go out there and see how well you do.
So the triumvirate, then the sort of northern Mexico triumvirate, if you added in the logical progression, there you go. Sendero, El Gavilan, logical progression in one trip. Yeah,
and that one's bigger and harder for sure, but yeah, it's kind of on your route.
Cool. Well, I'm stoked, and I definitely want to go down and do it. I've got 2 friends that are interested.
Nice.
So
yeah, you got this story going. You're like a part of the story there, Chris.
I'm a part of the story. I know. I got to go do it. So, well, what should we move to now? Because there's some other stuff on my list. I've got Kochamo. I've got Golden Gate. You have this brief visit to the Ghost River. Speaking of somewhere I'm part of the story that I wanted to ask you about. I mean, Squamish. Like, what's next? What do you want to talk about?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure we'll cover all of them.
Well, we're going to eventually run out of time before we run out of adventures, I think. But I mean, that's
yeah. I think I'd be excited to talk about Golden Gate. That's definitely like the thing in my climbing that I'm still like the most sort of proud of, I guess, and like still kind of riding the probably like psych about that one, even though it's been a year.
Yeah, well, let me preface that with talking about Freerider. You had, I think, 3 attempts, like 2 really major ones, and then you sent with Jacob, I think. On that, it was kind of a long saga going up there and bashing your head against it and finally getting it done. And it seemed like the process for Golden Gate just showed how much you've grown as a climber, not just your abilities on the rock, but your abilities to deal with a big wall. Seems like sort of all came together.
Yeah, it was definitely a very different experience from Freerider. Yeah, I just like went about it with sort of a pretty structured plan that I created for myself and attacked the plan, and it kind of just worked out perfectly. So I guess people kind of know what Freerider and Golden Gate are. I mean, Freerider is 32 pitches, and it has one 13A. Most people have seen Free Solo, heard about Alex soloing it in 4 hours, but most people climb it in like 5 days or so. And then Golden Gate
If they've listened to the Enormocast, they've heard about the Freerider, I assure you.
And then Golden Gate is like a paralleling route that has 4 13A pitches, and all the 13A pitches are in the top half of the route. It definitely like felt like a lot harder than Freerider, just because you need to be a lot more strategic. Like there's not just one pitch that I needed to kind of worry about, like one crux pitch. There were these 4 crux pitches. And so essentially what the like game becomes is you have to send each of these crux pitches without using very much time or energy, because then you have to do the next one, and then you still have to do the next one, and then you still have to do the next one. So it's not only like, can you send a 13A like high up on a big wall, but can you send multiple 13As like one a day for multiple days in a row? And so I guess I decided in the fall, like around September, that I wanted to try Golden Gate in the spring. And I kind of set myself like a 6-month training plan which basically meant going sport climbing, which sounded pretty fun. But it was like pretty focused sport climbing. So going, what I was just talking about, where I knew I had to basically send 13A as quickly and as efficiently as possible, because up on the wall, like I wouldn't have time or energy to spare. They had to be like executed perfectly, kind of right away.
And skin.
Yeah, totally. I didn't mention that. That's another factor. Yeah, for many reasons that you need to. Yeah, the pitches are all super crimpy. Actually, that's a.
Yeah, I remember
point.
Skin being such an issue.
Oh yeah,
on
you
those
also
missions.
been up Golden Gate, haven't you?
Yeah, but not in any capacity that really involved using my skin that much. But I remember like getting my skin completely roached on the bowler problem on Freerider. So, and you're only halfway up at that point too. But yeah, I mean, just the factors that like don't get in.
Oh, you have to,
put
I
into
think
the
you
press,
have to get really nerdy about it. Like I bring a skincare kit. They talked about this on the Dawn Wall, but it's definitely like a real thing. You pack a skincare kit as part of your big wall essentials, like big wall free climbing essentials. And that'll have things like baby wipes to wash your hands every day, and climbing salve to make sure your like skin is kind of recovering, and then nail clippers, skin files to kind of get if you're starting to develop a bit of a edge or something on your tips, and to kind of file it down so it doesn't turn into a split. You have to be like preemptive with that and not let it get ahead of you.
Yeah, and I think that route too, as I was, and I've, this has been on the podcast before too, but it's just way less straightforward. Aside from the harder grades, the Freerider is like, you're in these massive systems that go on and on and on, and you follow them basically to the top, other than the traverse pitch, and there's like all this shenanigans sideways, downwards, that goes into that climb. I think that makes it a way more logistically difficult thing as well. Yeah,
Golden Gate has 4 down climbs, which is like kind of a funny thing to be doing when you're free climbing. These like down climb pitches that connect the systems to like make the free line go.
Well, and I felt too like I felt really, I mean, we had really bad weather, so we were like, doing this with all these clouds rolling around the ship. But when you leave the Salothe or whatever Freerider and go right, like I felt really committed, and I know there's a way down, and I was aware of like you can like string this stuff together, but it still felt really nervy to leave that, like, again, that system that runs to the top, that's real clear, and like, here we go.
Can repel Freerider at any point. People repel Freerider all the time.
So I remember psychologically like leaving that felt like, okay, here we go. And of course, like the very next day it rained for like 2 days straight. So while we were like bivvied somewhere at the end of those traversing pitches.
Oh man, I had like the opposite problem. We went up there in a heat wave, and it was so hot. Basically, I was waking up at 5 every morning, and anyone who knows me, I'm like super not a morning person. But it was like the only way. The sun came onto the wall at noon, and so we would try and get as much distance covered before noon. And as soon as the sun hit, we got our tarp out. The tarp was like the most useful item on the whole wall. We would get our tarp out, make a sun shelter, make a camp, have a siesta, just like hang out all afternoon, not moving at all, just like hydrating and eating food and getting to know each other, because that's the other thing about this route, is the guy I went up there with, Danford Yista. I met him like 2 days before.
Oh, really?
So I didn't actually know each other at all. So the siestas were like, oh, like, so where are you from? Like,
tell me your name again.
Yeah, so it's like get to know you time. And then we would pack up the tarp in the evening and try and get a few more pitches at dusk.
And so did you spend some time working it?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I arrived in the valley, I think sometime in mid-April, and I spent 3 weeks like camping on the top and wrapping in to kind of rehearse the crux, the like highest crux pitches. Mostly the move pitch. I was like pretty worried about the move pitch. It was supposed to be like substantially harder if you're short, and both like the only other 2 women to have climbed the route before, Hazel and Emily, both had like a really tough time on that pitch. I think Hazel even wrote like a whole blog about it, and like those 2 women in rock climbing are kind of like in a totally different league of climbing than like where I'd put myself.
Yeah, that's not encouraging when Hazel Finley's like, fuck, that thing was hard.
Yeah, I know, exactly. She wrote like a whole blog post about the challenges of this pitch. I'm like, who am I to like think I can just like climb this pitch? And also like Emily had a meltdown on it. I mean, that was also, she had other things going on. It was like, I think her first time up El Cap. But yeah, so I was like pretty concerned about the move pitch, and I camped up on the top, wrapped in. It's like 300 meters down to there. So I had 300 meters of static rope, which is like a mission in itself just to like even access these pitches to work them. It's not like a single pitch crag project. And yeah, I had as much trouble as I expected to have on this pitch. It was the third session, like the third time wrapping in and trying it before I actually like did the move. And that was like the move in isolation. And this was like a move that I was expecting to do linked into this boulder problem at the top of this really sustained 512 pitch on like day 5 or 6 of this big wall. So I definitely had like a lot of self-talk and like kind of like mental struggles with like deciding to continue at that point, just because like sure, I did this move like a couple times on my third session, but it still felt like a max boulder move for me, and like to be able to do that in this like environment that I was just describing seemed like it was going to be really challenging. So I went back up there again, tried it for another session, managed to do the move, I think 6 times that day, and did manage to like link the boulder together, not from the bottom of the pitch, but the actual boulder I managed to link. Still seemed like pretty maybe unlikely to happen on day 5 or 6 of the wall. But yeah, at that point I kind of decided that my time in the season was kind of ending. I either needed to just give up on the idea, train more and come back another season, or just like give it a try anyways. And so I just like decided to try it anyways. Thought there wasn't really anything to lose. I had water stashed at the crux pitches at the top if I ended up taking a long time, needing more days. And yeah, I kind of just like set off with the idea that either I send now, or this is like a really good practice mission for me to come back better and stronger like in the fall.
When you're working on that stuff, and I've never asked anybody else this either, is it pure mini tractioning, or was part of your training to pull a rope and try to lead them?
Actually, because yeah, if I was there by myself, I could microtrax it. Because I did end up finding partners, I did most of the time just have a belay,
okay,
and just get belayed from above. It was just like way easier to, and like way less committing to kind of have ropes fixed down to the pitch and then just get lowered in and try it on like a top belay.
Did you ever try leading them?
No, I didn't actually.
Okay.
No.
I don't think that's common,
yeah,
but
the A5 Traverse, I actually only tried it like a couple times. It's, I think, a little bit logistically easier to lead it than follow it because of the way. But yeah, I mean, it's the same. It's a Traverse. You're swinging onto the pegs.
I was just curious. Tell me about like how you felt in terms of approaching these pitches, and then I mean, it sounds like you probably at least surprised yourself on the move pitch. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, to kind of like set the tone of like where I was at this point. So I spent the winter like sport climbing and kind of like training my mind to be able to execute pitches that were really hard for me, like very quickly. And so like getting really nerdy about like visualization and focus and trying to essentially like go up a pitch one time, like a 13A, 13B, like one time, coming down and being able to visualize the whole thing in my head, like every move, every hand, every foot, and then like recovering, drinking water, like making sure I'm completely rested, and then having this like perfect execution second go. And if it didn't happen on the second go, like figure out what went wrong, come down, and then have like another perfectly executed third go and try and get it on the third go. And just like as part of that training my mind, I also like the like physical training came as a side effect. Like it meant I was just getting huge mileage on 13 minus like all winter. So I didn't really need to worry about like physical training. I more like focused on this mental training because I knew that I had to send when I had to send. Like I wouldn't have time to kind of fluff around. And so I thought that like the mental training was actually going to be like the most important thing for me to have a chance at success on this route. So then when I was actually there, basically it paid off. So when I actually arrived at the move pitch, I'd never done it on lead. I'd never linked the pitch on top rope. But I had a sequence. I knew exactly what to do for the entire pitch, and I could like sit on the portal edge, look up at the pitch, and just run it, play it like in real time in my head. And so when I actually pulled on, I think it was in the evening, I climbed all the way right up into the boulder problem and sent the boulder problem, literally just sent it like first try, and then in the like outro to the boulder problem, my foot slipped, and I think that I was just so shocked that I'd essentially sent the thing on lead the first try, and even like all this like think that I'm like very level-headed and able to like train myself not to do that, but I'm not perfect at it, and my foot slipped after the boulder problem, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what? And then came down, Danford had to play on the pitch while I rested, and then I put my headlamp on and sent it second try. So it was just like, it still felt extremely hard. I had to try like, people say it's like at least, I don't know. I mean, it still felt like a limit boulder problem for me, but it just like executed perfectly. And both times actually. And then that second go, I managed to keep going to the chains.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like that mental training then helped furthermore that you were able to be like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
I just blew it, but because a lot of people, especially if you gave everything you had, you'd be like, fuck, I'm done now, you know? I mean, I would
like,
be,
well, that was
sure.
it. I messed up.
That was it. Oh, well, let's get out of here. We can't really get out of here. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
It's going to be really hard to get out of here. Let's try it again, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I was able to just like blow that off and like focus a second time.
Did you devise this training yourself, or did you get some advice?
I mean, I definitely talked to Jacob a lot about it.
Okay.
But it was just like,
there wasn't like a professional, No,
I didn't have any like
whispering in your ear or anything like that.
Else involved, really.
Right.
I think even throughout the entire training plan, I also struggled a lot with like self-doubt, and like the whole time I was like training, I was like, maybe I'm just like having fun sport climbing, and like this whole thing is too much, and I won't even try it.
Right.
I don't know. I had to like talk myself into it on like multiple times. So maybe I didn't like believe it was a real goal necessarily until it was happening.
Then how'd you send the rest? I remember thinking that pitch was like extraordinarily harder than the other ones. I mean, the down climb aside, because that's like, it's even hard to define. Why that thing's hard and stuff like that.
Yeah, the down climb. In hindsight, I actually am unsure which move I actually think is harder: the move on the down climb or the move on the move. I found the down climb really hard, and yeah, it's this bizarre, like basically like a down mantle. It's like a few move down mantle on a slab that gets 13A. And it's just like so puzzling. I actually like didn't really have a chance to practice that one at all. It's like smack in the middle of El Cap. So instead what I did was stash a lot of water there and camped there for 2 days. I had a rest day there and camped there for 2 days trying it. So that just like allowed myself to basically do the full process of like going on it, figuring out the sequence, and then executing the sequence over the course of those 3 days. And yeah, I mean, that was maybe the most shocking moment of the whole climb when I actually sent that pitch. So that kind of set the tone for the rest of it.
That's awesome.
I mean, at that point I was like, didn't know if I could send the above stuff, but I knew what they were. And the down climb was just this huge unknown.
It's amazing you found a partner that would do that with you. Like you only met 2 days before. Like we're just gonna sit here for 3 days while you basically top rope me down this pitch, because it's like
oh man, I was so lucky.
I mean, it's like a little bit sideways,
Danford.
but like you're essentially top roping it even though you're leading it, right? So it's like, what a trip. Like this dude was like, okay, cool.
No, I was extremely lucky in finding Danford. I had a few friends like recommend him to me, and we basically met for coffee, and I'm sure I came across as kind of a bit of a crazy person, but yeah, I was like, I've got all this water stashed on the entire route. I have all the stuff rehearsed. I have everything that we need to like go do this. It's ready to go. I just need a partner, and I need to leave. Like, we need to do it in the next couple of days, and it might take me. My range I gave him was 8 to 12 days. So I had enough water stashed for us to be 12 days, because I just like, I didn't know, like you can just only try these pitches like a couple times in a day, really. So like if I have a day it doesn't go, then I need a rest day, and then I need another day. Like it could easily have added up to, I gave myself 12 days worth of supplies to make sure that the reason for failure was like a mental and physical reason, not because I just like logistically didn't plan properly. That was like
right.
kind of part of my strategy. It was like very very thought out and planned.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and so I was like, yeah, we could be 8 days, we could be up to 12 days. Like,
what was it in the end?
8. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
So kind of just like right on schedule. Did the down climb in those like 2 days that I left myself for the down climb. Sent it on the second day. Had a rest day there before setting off into what you referred to as the unknown. Setting off into the like committing top half. And then each time I arrived at a crux, I sent one a day. Like the move on day 5, the Golden Desert on day 6, the A5 on day 7. And then we topped it.
I mean, that's like machine thinking. I love it. You're just like, I'm not going to because my ascent, which was like, 512 A2 or whatever, A1, was like the absolute opposite of that. I was just like, I don't know shit about this climb.
Like
Let's
chaos.
go up there and like check it out. But I mean, I had no pretense of freeing it. That was not the mission. It was just to go up there and see what it was like. But anyway, I love that thinking of like, and having that restraint in a lot of ways of like, I'm going to do this pitch and then I'm done for the day,
Yeah, I think you just can't. Like if you trash yourself early on, then you've ruined it.
It's awesome pacing. Okay, so I guess my last question is that, did you also have a horrible time on the very last teeny dihedral on top of the final pitch?
Oh my gosh, that is so hard. It gets 11B. So
it's okay because Jordan Cannon, who's like way taller than both of us, has also complained about that move. So
yeah, no, I was like very concerned about that. I had like never successfully sent that like 511B pitch that was like the last pitch. I mean, arriving there, I'm obviously like, okay, I'm not like about to not send Golden Gate because of this 11B. Like, I actually still have 4 days of food and water with me left.
Right. I'll sit here at the
I guess
base
like
of
the
this.
time pressure was nice not to have.
It's like a 6-foot dihedral
Yeah.
or like 7-foot dihedral.
Yeah.
It's like the
Oh, it
only
was
thing
super
between
desperate.
you and the top.
Yeah, for sure. I was like freaking out there. I was so tired. And like, it's like weird granite, like no holds, kind of just like stemmy, chimney, layback. Like, I mean, it's kind of all three.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't fall there, but I felt like I had to try really, really hard, and I was like almost off. Definitely.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think I have some messages with Jacob about that. He's like, I don't know if I could send. Like, I send the A5, and like it's 511 to the top from there. I'm like, I don't know. There's still that top pitch.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, like I said, you're not alone.
Oh yeah, that was desperate.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I was pretty excited to see that story when it came out. And again, referencing our first podcast together with Jacob, I listened to it again just to kind of prepare for this, and your level of experience and Jacob's are, at least as climbers, is pretty different still at that time. Although it was after Freerider, and so you'd learned a lot. But it just like, it was equal time for both you guys, but there was that theme of like, having sort of gone on all these adventures where Jacob was climbing harder than you or whatever. And I just loved that this was like, I don't know, it really seemed, I mean, it had happened before. It wasn't the only time, but up to that point, but it was real symbolic of like, this was your thing. And this was you, doing this rad thing that wasn't necessarily connected. And I just thought it was like a really great story. I don't know if you felt that way too, as far as like a big step in your sort of climbing as an independent climber.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think my climbing progression, I've been, I was like super fortunate to be able to learn so much from Jacob, and it was definitely like partners and girlfriend, boyfriend, and now we're married, but it was like this mentorship relationship. I mean, yeah, he's been climbing since he was 7. He was like a competition kid climber, and then started going on these expeditions and free climbed El Cap, and had been a professional climber for a while. And I just like was able to improve so fast through climbing with him and through learning how he goes about all of his climbing. And definitely I have noticed like a kind of step in the last like couple of years that I think I've started to really have my own goals that are quite separate from his goals, and like stepping off on going on these like big projects or these big missions and kind of creating my own team. And I mean, we still totally do a lot of trips together. We're going to Greenland together right now. So that like climbing partnership is also incredible still. But I'm definitely like, like setting my own goals and having like sort of my own independent path in climbing right now, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I love it because, I mean, there's obviously like nothing wrong with like locking in with a partner, and you know, everybody starts climbing somewhere, and that's how you started climbing, and you know, it worked out great. But you know, I do love the fact that you are finding the both of you are finding separate things to do, because I mean, you know, you guys are sort of a climbing power couple in a way, as embarrassing as that might sound to you. But the thing is those kind of things can, you know, where you guys, that's all you do is climb with each other, which can be cool. It can also be unhealthy, you know, depending on the relationship. So I just think it's great that, you know, you've got these two separate identities now that also come together. And even looking at your social media, I was like, God, they seem to even be like, you know, purposely like not spraying about each other. Is that something I'm perceiving, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we've definitely, especially this year, we seem to have had like totally different trips and goals and sort of big things we've been involved with. We actually only spent about a week together in the last 6 months, which was like kind of crazy. Had Christmas dinner together overlapping as I was leaving Mexico and he was arriving. But that's about to change because we're about to spend 2 months in a tent together in Greenland.
Cool.
But I mean, we still talk like basically every single day. Yeah, I don't think we've explicitly said that we're not sharing. I still like to kind of post about something if I think he's done something cool. But yeah, definitely all of our like posts and also just like all our adventures are not just like together like all the time. We also have like big dreams that are separate sometimes, and especially this winter that seemed to be really the case.
But man, we're like running out of time here, and I have so much on my list still. The Ghost. What did you do in the Ghost? Just
not very much. So actually, the Ghost in the kind of Canmore area. I was actually out there taking my full rock guide certification. So I was just being examined in the Ghost for a week. But I mean, that's also very relevant to my like kind of climbing stuff going on for me right now. I'm like now operating as an independent freelance guide in Squamish. I don't need to work as an apprentice for other companies, and kind of running some fun like kind of advanced courses. I'm running a handful of big wall clinics this year. Just had kind of had a wait list for them and opened up another set of dates. They seem to be like pretty popular, which is exciting. And some like fear of falling kind of like mental strategy clinics and yeah, kind of some like really fun, more maybe intermediate to advanced sort of topics that I'm exploring that are pretty fun.
Yeah, so the guiding thing's coming on strong as part of your sort of career and income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Not this summer because I'm leaving for most of the season to go to Greenland, but reach out to me next summer. I'll be doing much more guiding then.
Let me just get you to finish up with talking a little bit about Kokomo and that adventure. You've just been posting about it, even though it happened a little while back, kind of finishing the story. Tell me a little bit about that adventure.
Yeah, so I spent a chunk of this winter down in Kokomo, which is in Chile. It was actually my first time in South America. And that was part of a trip put together by my friend Hayden, who I mentioned earlier, the friend who went down to repeat El Gavilan and Los Nojales. And he, kind of pulled together a team with the objective of getting the first free ascent of an aid line down there called Picaflor, which means hummingbird, yeah. I mean, it's like an El Cap wall. You've spent time down in Kokomo as well, right?
Well, that's
right. All these
yeah.
places. Kokomo is kind of.
I've been around a little while.
Kokomo is seen as like the Yosemite of South America, or as they like to call it, Yosemite is the Kokomo of North America. It was just as incredible as I could have imagined it being. Just these huge granite faces and domes rising out of these multiple valleys. And the one that we were working on, Capicua, was super similar to El Cap. It was 1 kilometer tall, pretty slabby for the first part, and then kicks back and gets steep for the top part, and just like immaculate quality granite. Yeah, it had an aid line up it that had been established about 5 years ago, and Hayden wanted to pull together a team to try and free the line.
How was the weather?
Actually, we once again lucked out with weather for this one. I arrived in a pretty wet, cold period. It was rainy and cold for a few days, which actually ended up killing off all the tabanos. So the tabanos are the big bugs, if you remember. Super annoying.
Yeah, the big horse flies.
That are actually quite painful when they bite you. So when I arrived, people there were complaining about the tabanos a lot, and there was just this 3-day cold spell. It killed off all the bugs, and then it was sunny for 3 weeks. The whole time.
Man.
We were working on the wall.
Come on. The whole thrust of my trip was the fact that it rained the whole damn time. But
yeah, I hear that. I hear stories of that.
Yeah.
And then we left actually, and the next month was rainy.
Really? Yeah. And but you guys ended up not quite pulling it off, right?
We didn't quite. Yeah, so we'd had some sense of the expected difficulty of the free pitches from the guy who put the route up. But they ended up being kind of far off, and it ended up being a lot harder than we were expecting. Just the pitch difficulties were a lot harder. There were a lot of pitches of 512 slab. And then I think in the end there ended up being 4 or 5 pitches of 513 and 1 pitch of still unknown 13D or 14A. We think we didn't send it.
Right.
And yeah, so just the climb itself ended up just being a notch harder than we expected. And just to make the free climbing possible, we ended up having to do quite a lot of cleaning and bolting. Just because of just the nature of the rock in Kochimo. Does seem to follow a lot of slab and flared seams that are you can't really protect them. So we had a power drill down there with us, and we brought a lot of bolts kind of in case, and then we ended up adding a lot of bolts to just be able to make the line freeable. I mean, they were aiding on beaks up these seams that you just couldn't really place gear in. So just by the time we managed to kind of set up the route for free climbing, establish how hard the pitches were going to be, and then start rehearsing them, we kind of a combination of ran out of time, and also just kind of got our heads hit up against this crux, probably 13 plus 14 minus slab pitch right in the middle, pitch 20. So kind of a hard one to work if it's on pitch 20. But an incredible adventure and teamwork to actually get accomplish the amount that we did accomplish. I mean, we managed to set up the whole route for free climbing and managed to send every pitch except for the crux, which did include a bunch of sort of 12 plus and a handful of 13 minus pitches, which was
Sick.
I mean, I think it was still a huge success what we managed to accomplish down there. For me, what stands out the most for me about this trip compared to any other goals that I've worked towards was this kind of team free mentality. Once we realized how challenging, how many crux pitches basically this route had, it seemed not really possible in our time frame to, for one person to send the whole route. I wasn't going to send the whole route. Hayden wasn't going to send the whole route. And so what we did was we divided up all the crux pitches between Danford, Hayden, and I, and then just worked on them by microtraction. So we had fixed ropes basically up the whole cliff. We had we'd each been assigned or chosen our couple of cruxes that we were working on, and we would camp together. We had a base camp at pitch 9, and every day we would just split and go and work on microtraction on all of our pitches, just by yourself in the middle of this huge wall, going up and down your crux pitch. My pitches were pitch 17 and pitch 23 were the 2 pitches I was working on. And then you would come back down, camp together, discuss what your progress was, and then each time someone was ready to lead a pitch, then we would all go support, cheer them on, belay them. They'd tick it off. It was kind of this exciting tick because it was sort of a stepping stone for us ticking the whole cliff, and then we'd go back to our little separate projects. So in some ways it was a very team, this big team project, but also involved a lot of solo time, just up there by yourself, figuring it out.
You'd submit your TPS reports at the end of the day to corporate.
Yeah, accomplished this today. Did the move at Bolt 5.
We're having a performance review later this afternoon, Bronwyn. We're gonna have to talk a little bit about pitch 17. We thought you'd be a little bit further along by now.
Oh man, pitch 17, really. I think it took me like 6 or 7 days to get pitch 17. That was like my
nice.
long project.
And Danforth was back.
And Danford was back, yeah, exactly.
Danford.
So Danford, who I climbed Golden Gate with, is actually a friend of Hayden's, and
oh, cool.
Hayden was also in the valley when I climbed Golden Gate. He did Free Rider in a Day that season. Had been kind of his big goal for the season, and I reached out to him asking if he knew anyone who might be able to support me on Golden Gate, and he linked Danford and I up in the first place. So then this trip ended up being the three of us for most of it.
You're leading this sort of charmed expedition one after another life. How long are you going to keep this thing going?
I don't know. It still seems like a lot of fun, and it seems like I'm right in it right now, so I don't have any plans of pulling back anytime soon.
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks to Bron for doing that just before splitting to the Arctic. Or maybe it's not quite the Arctic. I don't know. Is it Greenland in the Arctic? Some of it must be. Follow Bronwyn over there at Instagram to find out what's going on with that. Maybe not till they get out. Or follow Jacob Cook over there at Instagram. Or if you check out YouTube, Jacob Cook's channel's got a bunch of great videos. Those guys are really good at making fun, kind of lo-fi videos around their climbing exploits. So go over there and check that all out. And remember, you can support the Enormocast by obviously supporting our sponsors. But if you don't feel like doing that, get your gear elsewhere. I get it. Got your loyalties. Anyhow, feel free to go to enormocast.com and click on the donate button if you feel like kicking down a little bit for the entertainment, inspiration, whatever, anger, rage, maybe, that this podcast brings you. How much is rage worth? It's got to be worth something. Don't feel rage when you're climbing, though. Feel good thoughts. Pay attention. Feel safe thoughts. Can you feel safety? Is safety a feeling? I think it is. Of course, check your knots.
Earth is a place that I've come to love, and I feel it's a second home, and I'm very protective of the humans because they're so helpless and ridiculous.